Man gives 4-bedroom house away for free, but there's one catch. Louisa stands frozen in her tracks. She looks around at her new home and feels sick to her stomach. How could she have been so stupid? She looks at the faded red stain on the floor, and a shiver runs up her spine. Then suddenly, she sees something in the corner of the room and gasps out in horror. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. It was at that moment then that Louise realized just why this house was free. She knew there was no coming back from this. When Louisa Johnson moved to a small town just south of Louisiana with her 3-year-old daughter, she was hoping for a fresh start. It was just what they needed. So when she came across the most perfect house for her and her daughter to start the new chapter in their lives, she was over the moon. But there was just one catch. And when Louisa found out what it was, she realized she'd made a huge mistake. After fleeing from her husband one cold dark night, Louisa, armed with a packed suitcase and her daughter in a buggy, jumped into their car and drove to a town 200 miles away. With her daughter fast asleep, Louisa pulled up to her new town, and straight away she felt like things could only get better. But she was so wrong. Louisa and her daughter were stopping with a friend while Louisa looked for a job and for somewhere to live. A few weeks in, and she managed to get a job at the local diner. Next on her list? To find the most perfect home for her and her daughter. But Louisa had no idea what was in store for her. It was a struggle at first to find a suitable house. Some were too expensive and some were too disgusting. Louisa wasn't asking for much, just a simple, 2-bedroomed house with a backyard. But a mysterious stranger was about to come into Louisa's life and help her out. Or so she thought. Louisa was stood looking at houses for sale outside the town's estate agency. With each house she looked at, her eyebrows arched and her eyes rolled back. She let out a sigh of frustration. She didn't want to keep living at her friend's house. Her daughter needed stability, she needed a home. And none of these were that. Then suddenly, Louisa felt a tap on her back. Louisa turned around and saw that the tap came from an old woman. Her face was more wrinkled than a summer shirt blowing in the wind, and her hair was wispy, the color of snow. "Can I help?" Louisa asked, an uneasy feeling shivering up her spine. "You're looking for a house," she replied. Louisa slowly nodded and the woman smiled, showing the few teeth she had. She handed Louise a piece of paper before walking away. What was on the paper? Quickly, Louisa opened the piece of paper, and to her surprise, she saw a picture of a gorgeous detached house. Then she saw how much this house was going for, $0. This house was free, but why? Boasting 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a large kitchen, and a gigantic backyard, it sounded perfect. But Louisa would soon learn this house was far from perfect. Underneath the picture was a cell phone number, and for a brief moment, Louisa debated what to do. Was there a reason this house wasn't at the estate agency? Should she even take advice from a complete stranger? She dismissed her thoughts and got out her cell phone. She dialed the number, feeling both excited and nervous. But little did Louisa know she was going to regret calling this number. After nearly a minute of waiting, finally, the number picked up and Louisa heard hello in her ear. Louisa quickly introduced herself and explained that she was interested in the house she had seen. The seller, called Mikey, was over the moon to hear Louisa's interest in the house. He insisted she come over straight away, and Louisa agreed. She had nothing to lose. But she was soon going to realize she did. Louisa drove to the address of the house, and already she could feel butterflies in her stomach. The drive was quite long, this house was further out than she had hoped, but she didn't care. She pulled up and Louisa was completely gobsmacked with how huge the house was in real life. Louisa was already sold. What could be wrong with this? She quietly muttered to herself. But Louisa was soon going to find out. As Louisa pulled in, she could see a man was stood at the front of the house. Louisa got out and the man came rushing over, a gigantic smile slapped on his face. "You must be Louisa, I'm Mikey," the man said. The two introduced each other, and Mikey swiftly kicked off the tour of the house. Louisa set foot inside her potential new home, not knowing what was coming to her. Walking around the house, Louisa reveled in the excitement. She could already picture her daughter playing in the backyard, and herself baking cookies in the stunning Victorian kitchen. Accompanied by Mikey, Louisa could tell he was enjoying her excitement and optimism for this house. Maybe he was just happy for her. But Louisa had no idea what Mikey's hidden agenda was. The house needed some work, but nothing too drastic. A few coats of paint and a tidy up. Louisa saw a dark red stain on the living room floor, but that was nothing a bottle of bleach couldn't fix. After seeing every area of the house, Louisa was confident she was making the right decision. But little did she know she was making a huge mistake. Mikey completed his tour of the house, and then started to explain to Louisa about its history. This house was his grandmother's, and unfortunately, she passed away a few years ago. Louisa was sad to hear that. She had lost her grandfather a few years ago, so she could sympathize with Mikey. The two then went into the living room to discuss the house over coffee. But she had no idea what was coming. Sitting in the living room amongst the gorgeous furniture and spacious rooms, Louisa had a feeling this house was too good to be true. Why would a house like this be given away for free? It sounded absurd. There had to be some sort of catch. And Louisa was right. There was a catch, and when she found out what it was, she was left feeling sick to her stomach. As Louisa and Mikey sipped on their coffees, Mikey said, "Oh, I forgot to ask, how did you find out about this house?" As Louisa placed her coffee on the crystal table in front of her, she replied, "An old woman showed it to me in town." As soon as Louisa said that, she saw Mikey's face go as white as a ghost. As if he had just heard something truly terrifying. Confused, Louisa asked what was wrong. But then suddenly, she saw something in the corner of the room. It was a picture hung up on the wall, a portrait of an old woman. It was Mikey's grandmother. Mikey's dead grandmother. It was the same old woman who showed Louisa this house a few hours ago. Louisa sat frozen in her tracks, and a terrible feeling hit the pit of her stomach. "Your grandmother," Louisa said, her voice trembling. "She's the old woman who showed me the house this morning." Mikey's mouth dropped open, and he put his hands over his face. Louisa didn't know what to do. She wanted to run out of this house and get as far away as possible. But she also wanted answers. "Mikey, what's going on?" she asked. Mikey looked at her and started to reveal the truth. "You see, the reason that this house was free was due to the fact that many people have claimed it's haunted. Many people have said the ghost of Mikey's grandmother Adele haunts the halls. Mikey himself had never seen anything unordinary, but he also made sure to stay far away from this house as he could." What about Louisa? Knowing all of this, was this house still the house of her dreams? When Louisa heard the truth, she decided to not go ahead with living there. Normally she didn't believe in the paranormal, but after the encounter with the old woman aka Adele, she felt different. Instead, she managed to find a smaller two-bedroomed house. But Louisa didn't mind. After all, wouldn't you rather have one less bedroom than a ghost lodger?